Today, I'm talking to Pamela Hart, who some listeners may know as Pamela Freeman. She has just published her 42nd book, An A-List for Death. This is with HarperCollins. So I know we have a lot to learn from Pamela as she's written across many genres, starting off in children's books, moving on to fantasy, and she's written non-fiction. Her historical fiction novels were wonderful, and more recently, she's moved into mysteries, specifically cozy mysteries. If you're not sure what a cozy mystery is, it's becoming a very popular genre, so stay with us to find out more. Thanks so much for joining us today, Pamela.
Oh, it's always so much fun to talk to you, Val.
I love talking to you and I love your books, and this is the latest one, An A-List for Death. If people haven't got their hands on a copy yet, can you tell us what it's about?
This is the second of the Poppy McGowan mysteries. So the first was Digging Up Dirt. And in this book, Poppy interacts with fame in a big way. She finds her auntie's best friend, Daisy, apparently having had a fall in the bathroom, but Auntie Mary's sure that she was attacked. And in doing so, she comes into contact with Daisy's son, Nathan Castle, who is a rock god. She gets photographed with Nathan, and there's a huge media storm about it, which leads eventually to a murder.
Now, it's important to note that this is a standalone book. It may be the second in the Poppy McGowan series, but you can read it without having read the first one, correct?
You can absolutely read it without having read the first one. But if you're a fan of romance, I would say that the romantic elements in Digging Up Dirt carry over to An A-List for Death. And so if you want the full romantic experience, you might want to start with that. But if you're just interested in a really good mystery, then A-List for Death is fine on its own.
So what inspired this story?
I guess just seeing all the hoo-ha about that happens online, you know, like a tiny little thing gets blown up into enormous proportions. And the other thing is, you know, I used to work in television at ABC Kids, and there's this huge gap between how people who don't have anything to do with the industry or with the media in general think about things in the media, and how the people who work in it think about it. And I guess that was kind of what I was trying to capture here.
Now, Poppy McGowan, I love the Poppy McGowan world, right? Because it is set in contemporary Sydney, and it has elements, as you say, of the media. It has elements of archaeology.
Yes.
It has elements, it's very much around the inner city of Sydney. And I don't think that there's been very much like it. You know, we've had series or cozy mysteries before, but they've been set in very different sorts of places. Now, I've just mentioned cozy mysteries, and I think that people, a lot of people haven't heard of the term, even though they've read the books.
Yes, yes. Cozy mysteries are mysteries where it's not a professional detective and where the tone is not dark. So in order to write a really great cozy mystery, you've got to have somebody who's not a professional as the sleuth. They don't necessarily have to go out detecting. I mean, Poppy doesn't go, I will solve this mystery, you know, until she's forced to. But they have to not be a police officer or a private detective. And the feeling is you have to have justice in the end. Everything's going to be okay at the end. So there are some don'ts as well. You don't have graphic sex and you don't have graphic violence. It's all about the characters. You've got to have engaging characters.
Yeah, so we'll go through, I'd love to go through with you 5 elements that you've identified of a cozy mystery. But before we plunge into that, I do think that, you know, a lot of people haven't heard the term, but they've heard of the crime genre. You know, everyone hears of crime and thriller, you know, and within crime and thriller, there's psychological thrillers, there's political thrillers, there's action military. There's a whole range of subgenres. It's absolutely fascinating. And I have to say, I absolutely have fully embraced cozies now, because sometimes you don't want to have the violence. Sometimes you don't want the world to be, you know, saved from certain destruction. Sometimes you don't want that in your face, you know, disaster or crime or just awful stuff happening.
Yes.
But you do want a mystery. You do want the unfolding. It's
and you
absolutely
want to get away from the horrible stuff that's happening.
Yes.
So yes. Look, it's been really interesting. When Digging Up Dirt came out, I got a lot of messages from people saying, I haven't been able to read lately. And I just grabbed this and I zipped through it, and it was such a relief. And people talk about escapism as though that's a bad thing, but I actually think it's a real gift if somebody can give you a book that will take you away from your troubles. I think that's an enormous gift to give someone. And I'm certainly grateful for it when I read books like that. So the classic cozy is Agatha Christie. And really these books just kind of bring that up to date, you know, and with a much younger main character than Miss Marple. And what Christie offers us, and all the great cozy mystery writers offer us, is a sense that the world will make sense if only you keep looking, and that you can bring evil to justice, which, you know, is very comforting, I think. But it also has the intellectual puzzle component, trying to figure out who the red herrings are, trying to figure out how the murder really happened and why. And I think that it appeals to people who like a little bit of thinking as well.
Yes, I love it. I love that it's a mystery. I love that I'm trying to solve it. I never know who done it until the end. In the same way with, you know, your historical fiction novels, I never know, you know, what's going to happen until the end, because it could always go this way. It could always go this way. So
yeah, well, I don't know either. So
what?
No, when I'm writing it, I have no idea who the murderer is.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So then in the second draft, of course, I have to go back in and put in a few more red herrings and you know, maybe plant a couple of clues. But in the first draft, I have no idea. I just write the story and find out as Poppy finds out.
You've mentioned Agatha Christie. What are some other examples that people will have heard of cozy writers?
Well, the Phryne Fisher books are probably in Australia the ones that are best known. But cozy's having a real resurgence.
It is, right.
And people like Louisa Bennett and Kelly McCourt are writing really, and of course Louisa Bennett is our own LA Larkin, who teaches for us. And yes, so cozy is really kind of coming on strong at the moment. It never really died away at all in America, but the American cozy is a bit sweeter. You know, it's a little bit more saccharine. But the British cozy, Agatha Raisin, for example, would be one people would know, maybe the Max Tudor books. So they've always been around. It's never really gone away, but it's really coming back strongly now.
They're just absolutely delightful and such a good read. Let's move on to the 5 elements of a cozy mystery, because there are specific things to be aware of if you want to write in this genre. So let's get started. What do we start with?
If you want to write a cozy mystery, first of all, as I said before, you have to have an amateur detective. So not a police detective, not a private eye. It's got to be somebody who gets caught up in these crimes almost by accident. They just happen to be around, or it's somebody they know who gets killed. The other, you can't have graphic sex or graphic violence. And I would put those two together. It's that tone, you know, the slightly lighter tone. So you're not going to find serial killers that cut people up or anything like that. There's no forensics. You know, we don't do DNA in a cozy mystery. I mean, the police might. The police who are investigating it might. But the actual main character doesn't have anything to do with forensics. And then you need to have, it's all about character. Characters are what bring people back. You talked about Poppy's world. It's not only the fact that it's contemporary Sydney, it's also the people in that world. So in a cozy mystery series, which they often are, we come back to the same people, you know, the kind of the family, the friends. So there's a world that you create for that series, and the tone of that is welcoming, I guess. You have to welcome your reader in.
You can relate to all of these characters.
Absolutely.
You know somebody, or you know, it's likely that you know somebody who's very similar to some of these characters. Even some of the peripheral characters, you go, oh, that's based on so and so.
Well, it often is, of course, based on so and so. I do base my characters on my friends and not my family. The families are different, but my hairdresser wants to be the next one.
So, okay,
that's great. No problems, Roger. He's a great character. I'm happy to put him in.
Murder in the Salon.
Murder in the Salon. Well, maybe that's 4 or 5. But and the other thing, I mentioned the justice at the end, but the other thing I think really does set set cozy mysteries apart is the victim. So often in like forensic serial killer kind of stories, the victim's almost irrelevant. You know, somebody goes out and looks for a dark-haired girl who's, you know, 25, right? And who they kill is just a plot function, which is really kind of cold, I think. And it's so often women being like violently assaulted. Whereas in the cozy, the victim is in a sense the core of the crime. Knowing who the victim is and having a victim who has quite a complex life, because then you have lots of suspects. You can't have a victim with a simple life. It's got to be somebody who has layers that can be uncovered and secrets that can be discovered. And, you know, so I think getting the victim right is quite an important part of the cozy.
And I suppose it's kind of handy when if they are amateur sleuths, there's already an inherent conflict with the police because,
well,
you know,
I'm not a big fan of that whole I won't tell the police things, because they're professionals, you know. When somebody in a cozy mystery, this is the thing that really annoys me about some of the American ones. Somebody in a cozy mystery gets the clue, right, and goes, oh, I won't tell the police this, or they might misinterpret it. I'll just go and, you know, and it's like, and of course that ends up with them almost being killed, right, which is the point of it. But it's kind of lazy, I think, to do it that way.
But well, I meant that there's, so I take your point and I agree with that. But the police will find you a little bit annoying.
Yes, they do. Yes, yeah. And I think they find Poppy annoying in the way they find journalists annoying generally. Because that's often the kind of direction she's coming from.
Yes.
All right. People.
So we have, you know, number one, they can't be a professional detective. There's something, there's an amateur inquisitory element about them.
Yeah, you've got to be nosy. Your main character's got to be nosy. Yeah.
So did you pick Poppy's profession? So Poppy is an ABC, you know, producer.
She works at ABC Kids as a scriptwriter and researcher. Yeah.
Like someone I know.
Well, look, I have to say, I did not pick her profession in order to make the mystery better. I just wanted to have fun with digging up dirt, and I used to do that job. So I didn't had to do any research. But it does give you connections. And of course, in that job, I interviewed so many people. And so people talk to her, you know, she knows how to get things out of people. And I think that is a key element for your amateur sleuth, that people talk to them. Partly because they're not the police. So they'll say things to your amateur girl that they would never say to a police officer. And that helps, you know.
Yes. Okay, so there's that amateur sleuth. There's the no graphic violence, and I totally get that because it goes against the whole vibe of a cozy mystery. No graphic sex. So why is that? Because they do have sex.
They do have sex in these books. Yes, they do. It's the tone. Look, honestly, the main reason there's 2 reasons. Okay, one is the American market doesn't like it. You know, the people who read cozy mysteries don't want to see sex on the page. But the other reason is it's in these books, it's not usually a story element.
Yes.
So I feel like sex should be on the page when it's relevant to the story, and it shouldn't be on the page when it's not relevant to the story, just like any other scene. And it's very rare that the sex in a cozy mystery would be an element of the story, you know.
So it literally would be gratuitous.
It would literally would be. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you want to see the relationships develop, but, you know, a scene with body parts happening, it doesn't actually advance the story necessarily. So that's, I think, the main reason it's not there in the Australian and English ones. But it's also about tone, you know.
Yeah. So the other thing you said, it really needs to be character driven. So have, you know, engaging characters, not just your main character. So when you first, so Poppy and you know, her another main character, Toll, they were in the first book. When you were creating Poppy's world and the characters in it, how did you go about doing that? How did you kind of think, I need this kind of character, I need them to I need to make them likable in this way, or engaging to readers anyway?
Not so much in this way, but what I was thinking about were the things that I was bored with. So I read so many mystery stories where it's an alcoholic ex-cop or some, you know, who's lost everything and is struggling with his relationship with his children, you know, that, or the alcoholic cop who is struggling with her relationship with her children, and she has nobody and she has no friends, and, you know, and it's like, I want the opposite of that. All right, I want somebody who's got a really strong, solid family, who's well behind her, even if they don't quite understand her, you know, and nice, lots of friends. You know, she has a lot of friends, not all of whom we've met yet, because that's what people are like, you know, and and it's partly that tone, it's partly that idea of a welcoming, engaging tone that people can relax into. You know, when you've got the ex-alcoholic, well, the sober alcoholic cop who is struggling, you're always waiting for that to go bad. And so there's a tension inherent in his character, whereas I didn't want that. I wanted all the focus to be on the mystery. So it was more about surrounding her with warmth, I guess, and a sense of stability, that she's operating out of a sense of knowing who she is and where she belongs. And that's challenged, you know, when she meets Toll and so on. But to start with, I didn't want her to be this kind of tortured loner. Yes. And then all my friends said, can I be in it? And I went, sure. You know, so her friends are my friends.
So I get what you're saying about the tortured loner, because, as you say, there is an inherent tension there when they've got so many of their own personal problems. And therefore, you do have to focus on the mystery. So I am absolutely fascinated when people write mysteries, and, as you have just said, you don't know who done it until the end. I mean, really? I mean, but it's so... there's a level of complexity in a mystery that has to make sense. Otherwise, the reader is going to go, oh, that's ridiculous, you know, as if that's going to happen, or that's just too convenient a resolution. So I don't even know how your mind would work in order to be able,
well, you have to
make that happen without planning.
Okay, I guess the thing is, you have to make it so that everybody you suspect really could have been the murderer.
Yes.
And then you pick one.
Okay, you make it sound so simple, Pamela.
It's actually, and then you go back. It's the second draft that makes the mystery.
That's the key, isn't it?
I mean, I did 3 structural edits on an A-list today.
Because if you did leave it at your first go, well, apart from the fact that you shouldn't, I mean, it would be a convenient ending. It would be an easy resolution.
It would be sloppy, yeah. Yeah, and also you wouldn't have created options. Like you've got to have just enough clue and not too much to make it obvious.
Yes.
But you also have to have that for everybody, for all of the suspects, in the first half of the book. And then the second half, particularly after the end of the second act, after turning point 2, then you're shedding suspects. You're peeling them away until you get to the core and you find out who the murderer actually is.
So, in fact, when you go back and rewrite it or redraft it, you are not only putting in the clues, obviously, of the actual whodunit person, but for everyone else. So you're doing a lot of inserting of clues and red herrings all the way.
Absolutely.
Well, in the first half, especially.
And with Digging Up Dirt, I actually put an entirely new character into the second draft because I didn't think there were enough red herrings.
Oh, right. Enough potential suspects.
That's right. Yeah. And well, in An Alias for Death, I put another character into the final structural, the final copy edit draft. My editors kind of said, yeah, okay, I think the mystery's working now, but it's not as funny as the last one. Can you make it funnier? That was my total editorial back, on the final draft. And I hadn't, a lot of the reviews talk about Digging Up Dirt being funny, but I hadn't set out to make it funny. I hadn't done it deliberately.
Right.
And it was just how Poppy sees the world, and this book was a little bit kind of darker because it was about an old lady getting hurt. And so in the original, she was in a coma for half of the book, and that ended up being too dark. And so I have her now wake up quite soon. But still, the kind of basic thing that it's about is really nasty. And so I had to lift it a lot higher with other things than I did with Digging Up Dirt. And I didn't know how I made it funny in the first place. So trying to make the second one funny was quite a trick. And so I put in a new character that lifted it a bit, which is Charlie.
Yeah. Oh, yes. He's a great character. Oh my God. I love it. So you write across so many genres. Oh my God. Children's, picture books, non-fiction picture books, historical fiction, because your last lot of novels before Digging Up Dirt were historical fiction, fantastic books, The Desert Nurse, The Soldier's Wife, and so on. Yeah, Charles and Scandal. And then you move into cozy mysteries. So what are your comments for people who think, oh no, I need to pick a lane, I
would say pick a lane.
What?
Well, look, I have had a wonderful career. This is my 42nd book.
Oh my God.
And I've had a wonderful career writing pretty much whatever I liked. And I've been very fortunate to have it published. But if you want to make a living as a writer, if you want to actually write full-time and make a decent living at it, you got to pick a lane. That's how people make a living. So it depends what you want. If you want to be like a really successful full-time writer, pick a lane, stay in it. If you just want to have fun, write what you love, And I love all of the genres that I write in. But
you obviously make a living from it because you're on your 42nd book.
No, I don't. No.
You are a full-time writer.
I'm a teacher as well.
Well, yes, too. I guess most writers do have.
You have another job. Most
do
of us
other
have
things.
Another job. That's right. So that's what I'm saying. If you want to have only one job and that job be writing, then you're going to pick a lane. But
so you mean focus on a genre?
Focus on a genre. So, and it's certainly for the first, few books, which is what I did, Val. I published 18 children's books before I wrote my first adult one. And so I did pick a lane in that sense. And children and YA is great because you can write in any genre you like. And as long as the librarians recognize your name, you'll do okay, so it's much freer than writing for adults in terms of genre. But yeah, so I picked that lane for a long time. And I'm still in it, I still, as Pamela Freeman, I'm still writing for children and loving it. So I did that, and then I wanted to write for adults, and so I've been bopping around genres for adults for a while.
So pick a lane initially to get yourself established, and then go and explore.
I think so,
where your heart takes you, kind of thing.
And unless you're self-publishing, in which case you can run 2 lanes. I know a lot of people that run 2 lanes under different names. But that is an enormous amount of work. Like,
yes, because you have to
do all
cultivate
the marketing, you have to do all, and also self-publishing generally means you have to write books more quickly. Yes. So I'm doing, one poppy book a year kind of thing, whereas if I were self-publishing mysteries, I'd have to do at least 2. So there is a huge amount of work involved with self-publishing, but it does allow you to control which lane you're in more.
Yes. So this is with HarperCollins, as was Steaming Up Dirt. So what's next? You've decided you want to stick with cozies? What's happening now?
I could stick with Poppy for a long time.
Yeah, I love her. I love her world. Yeah. I love what she does.
So I already have a couple of stories in mind. The third one will be An Ancient Grave, which is set on an archaeological dig. And so I'm going to the dig in February.
You are?
Yeah. It's been put
up
for 2 years already, which is really, it's going to make the book a bit late. But yes, so I'll be going there in late January, early February.
Wow.
To get all the kind of sights and smells and feels and all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, Poppy, as I said, I really like Poppy. I really like Poppy's world. I really think that, there's absolutely a series where you're going to get a loyal readership. I want to read the next Poppy book. What came into my head, though, was when you think about Poppy, like as dot points on paper, she's a woman in Sydney. Sure, she works in the media. And I was trying to work out why I do love her and want to be in her world so much, because when you just hear what I just described, she just sounds okay, kind of interesting, but there's something about her character and the people around her that make me want to get to know her. And I haven't been able to figure out what it is. Maybe you can tell me.
Well, obviously she's a lovely person.
Sure.
Look, I think it's partly that it's our world. So often when we read mysteries, it's somebody else's world, whether that's The Dry or, Mystery Road or whatever. And it's like, it's out there and it's not us, right? Whereas Poppy is us, it's our world. It's Sydney, it's urban. She has gay friends. She has, a wide variety of ethnicities. And do you know what I mean? It's like, this is the Sydney of us. And that was what I was trying to do with it. And we don't see that. We don't see the Australian urban story very often, unless it's like Northern Beaches for Leanne Moriarty, but the urban setting, you don't get very often.
Yes.
The last time we had it was with Peter Corris's stories, but they were private eye stories. So I think it's partly the recognition thing. It's like, oh, I could be in there. I could be in that world. I could walk straight into that story.
Yes. And what I also love is you've just said that in her world, there are a variety of ethnicities, because that's quite simply real life. And I love that you have included a variety of ethnicities without saying, oh, and they eat rice or they have a falafel. It's just because, you just talk about it like normal.
This is my life. That's what my life is.
It's
like.
Normal people's lives.
Normal people's life. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Normal people's life. And I think this is where I just don't think we see that very often.
No. I think it's great because it makes it more believable.
It's all about the characters. In the end, it's all about the characters feeling like, oh yeah, I know someone like that.
Yes.
Is what it's all about.
All right. So the next book, Poppy is going on a dig or an ancient
Jordan.
Okay. An ancient she's going to explore an ancient civilization. That's what you're writing at the moment, or you're researching?
I've started writing some of your listeners won't know that my husband is an archaeologist.
Yeah.
So I have my research on tap, but I am doing a lot of, it's set in a particular dig, a real dig, which I'm going to rename, obviously. And I have, the permission of the dig runners to do that. So I'm at the stage where I'm about to put up the maps of the dig on the wall, and so that I can figure out how long it would take her to walk from point A to point B, and all of that kind of stuff. But I'm also developing the characters.
So you're in the middle of writing and researching that. What have you already planned out further books in the series?
Yes. Well, I have planned out what happens. There's the problem with cozy mysteries, as anybody who's ever watched Murder, She Wrote will know, is that after a while it becomes ridiculous that this person keeps stumbling over dead bodies, right? And I've always wanted to write a scene where a friend of Jessica Fletcher's in Murder, She Wrote, the daughter is getting married and the mother wants to invite Jessica, and the girl's going, no, you can't have that woman here. Everywhere she goes, someone dies, So I do have in mind in a couple of books that Poppy will take a turn in what she's doing at work, which will make it less ridiculous.
Okay, well, very, very keen already to read the next book. So hurry up, Pamela. Right.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So you've mentioned that the other thing that you do is teach, and of course you're the Director of Creative Writing at the Australian Writers Centre. And what's it like when you see your own students get published? Students who you've been working with, and tell me.
Well, this week I got an advanced reading copy of Arc Unforged. I know that sounds weird, but the title of the book is Arc Unforged. And I got an advanced reading copy of it. Seth Haddon is the writer, and he was one of my students in Write Your Novel. And I knew he was very talented, and gave him a lot of encouragement. And getting that back from his publicist to say, please, can you give us a blurb?
Brilliant.
Just fantastic. It's so exciting, particularly when you like the person involved. Obviously, it's even better. But just this last month, there's been a whole run of people getting like 3-book contracts. And well, one of our students, again from Write Your Novel, got 2 contracts, one for 2 and one for 1 from 2 different publishers. And it's so satisfying, particularly when they come back and say, whether it's thanks or can you help, which, I don't close the doors on most people, as you know, Val. And so people often come back to me and go, oh, I'm going to write a query letter, what do I have to say? Or, and then they come back and go, I got an agent. And it's great to be part of that process.
Yes.
And, it really does happen. I think if you do want to be a writer, it's absolutely achievable. I mean, we've seen it over and over and over again.
Over and over.
But it is so exciting and satisfying. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So let's finish up with your top 3 tips, not for writing generally, but for writing a cozy.
Okay. First of all, you've got to really like your main character. Because if you don't like them, the reader won't like them. So this is one genre where you can be a little bit self-indulgent with your main character. You can put a bit more of yourself in them maybe, or pick someone you really like as the basis for them. But definitely you have to like the character. The victim has to be complex so that you get enough suspects. I mean, it seems really obvious when you say it, but often that's where people fall over. They've only got 1 or 2 suspects, and it's not enough to sustain a whole book. So you've got to work on your victim. And then thirdly, the tone. Remember that what you're offering your readers is an escape. It's entertainment. You're not there to make them think deeply about the world, although you can do that as well. But that's not your main aim. Your main aim is to keep them entertained. And that's a great thing to offer someone if you can do that. So that would be my first top 3 tips.
Love it. All right, everyone, get your copy of An A List for Death. It's such a great read. And congratulations, and thank you so much for your time today, Pamela.
Thanks so much, Val.